much on what Pat and Walt had to say. In fact, we sat down on Friday and said, oops, there's almost, actually when we spoke about the topics, we felt there was a bit of an overlap, but then when we looked at each other's content, we found it meshed quite nicely. Pat and Walt have spoken very much about what happens at that portfolio, defining value at the organization level. I'm going to come a little bit closer, a little bit deeper into what happens inside teams, what is the roles, and so forth. Yeah, a little bit about myself. Passionate about this stuff since a long time before we knew it was called Agile. Been building software for 30 mumble years. In 2000 or thereabouts, I found my way to XP and really felt that I had found my place. This was the way that I've been building software. 2002, I got actively engaged in training, coaching, educating, working with teams. A couple of years ago, the Agile Alliance got crazy and I got elected to the board. And I'm hoping for re-election for another term. And one of the things that I've picked up in my role on the board is the Manifesto Translation Program. And it's been really, really fun and valuable seeing the communities that grow from this really simple thing. I know Philippe said if you hear the Agile Manifesto again, he's going to puke all over the place. Well, tough, you're going to hear about it. Because what I have experienced with the translation program is the way, it's now available in 49 languages. I was hoping it would be 50 by this weekend, but it's only 49. Every one of those languages has resulted in the formation of a community around doing that translation work. And my role is very much to shepherd that, to see it happen. And it's been wonderfully fulfilling to watch. And the last one that we published was either Slovenian or Estonian. I can't remember which order they were in. So yeah, have a look at agilemanifesto.org for your language. So, bit of an agenda. I fundamentally think that Agile works, but we still have problems. I want to talk about one of the areas that I think we have problems in, and this is that product owner role, and maybe throw an idea out there as the value manager. And then I'm going to get down in the dirt. What are some of the tools that we use to help teams define this value stuff? And there are a set of tools that are quite down embedded in working within teams to do this. And my fundamental message, I suppose, is very much focus on value, not practices. And please, as we go, let's just have a conversation. Ask questions, challenge. Just because I put it up on a slide doesn't mean it's right. I will put the assertion out there that I fundamentally believe that Agile works. Teams that adopt the Agile principles, values, and practices do deliver better results. Unfortunately, they very often, more efficiently, still solve the wrong problem. But they are doing it really efficiently. And they're having fun doing it. And fun is important when you're looking at the world of work. Our mission at the Agile Alliance is to make the world of work more humane, more productive, more sustainable. There's fun in there. We looked at that value and mission over this weekend, and we delved deeply into what do we mean by that stuff. We know how, but we don't do it well. Depending on which study you look at, and Pat pointed us at the Standish Group that 68% of features in a typical product are seldom or never used. And there are other authors, other studies out there, but somewhere between 30 and 60% of projects are considered successful by the people who pay for them. So that means that somewhere between 70 and 40% of the money we're spending is wasted. Now, I don't care what the number is in there. It's still a bucket load of money that's being wasted. It's going straight down the drain. We've got users who don't like us. Now, isn't that a horrible term? The only other domain where we talk about users is drug addiction. There's something fundamentally wrong in our language. These are not our users, these are our customers. These are our raison d'être. The reason we exist at all is to make these people happy. But we call them users. Our clients, our customers, our source of joy and value. And certainly the sponsors, the people within the organization that pay for our work, well, they think that we really are good at throwing money down the drain. If you ask the typical CEO what do they think of their information technology department, they're going, oh no, just a waste of money. We've got no choice, we have to deal with this bunch of geeks. But really, if I could find a way to outsource them properly, I would. That's what they think of us. Because we're not delivering value. Maybe there's a problem in this manifesto that I'm so proud of. We value working software over comprehensive documentation, which often gets interpreted as works on my machine or compiled clean. Yeah. Right. But I am going to be the tacky salesperson because I care so much about this manifesto. There's stuff inside there. There's more. Our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. How many of your software teams do actually focus on delivering value first? That's your highest priority if you're aligned with this manifesto. We welcome changing requirements even late in development. Agile processes harness change for the customer's competitive advantage. We're about delivering valuable software that delivers competitive advantage to our organization. But the typical CEO says, we're a waste of their time and money because we're not doing that. We've got to fix this. Problem is, if I talk to the average software team, and I spend a lot of time working down at the team level, I don't get the opportunity that Pat has to talk to the CX level as much as I would like. I spend most of my time down in the dirt with the teams. What is value? What is competitive advantage? Now these are intelligent, bright people. If you give them a clear understanding, if you give them a guiding light, they can follow it. But if you don't, they're going to be really, really good at solving the wrong problem. And they're going to have a lot of fun doing it. So the key is figuring out where that value comes from. What is the value? In terms that this team can work with and understand. How many of you come across this concept of gathering requirements? They're like mushrooms in a field. Go out and just pick them up off the floor. Nonsense! At least in the latest version of the business analysis body of knowledge, and I care deeply about that. I'm one of the authors of the new release. We don't talk about gathering, we elicit. Sometimes it feels like we extract like the dentist with teeth. But that isn't value. I found this quote from Jed Sims. Being asked what you want out of a system is like being asked what you want out of life. But that's what we do. Tell me what you need. I want to build some software. What do you want it to do? We barely ever ask with why are we doing this? And we do have a role. Agile has given us this new role, the product owner. I was talking to one of my colleagues and she said, yes, you mean the source of all blame. The concept of the Scrum product owner is wonderful. Many of the slides that I see talking about the product owner role actually have them taking the shirt off like Superman. Because when you think about it, this single individual who knows everything about the organization, who knows everything about what our customers need, who can make the trade-offs, who understands the technical debt and the value of architecture. Yeah, it doesn't really work. It's okay if you're in the, where's Dick? He's gone. If you're in print shop and you're a 6-person team and you're building a brand new product and your customer is actually sitting right there next to you, yeah, then the product owner is wonderful. And it works really well. As soon as you get into the type of organisations that I spend my time in, and they tend to be large by Australian and New Zealand standards anyway. I know it's small by your standards. But financial institutions, government departments, telecommunications organisations, this is the area where I'm working. And to tell them to come up with a product owner doesn't work. But maybe we can start talking about extending into this concept of business value management. We have this myriad of competing stakeholders. They've got often contradictory needs. You need to find a way of herding these cats. Knowing which customer to bring to the team at which point in time, and understanding where value comes from. And the person in this role is not a novice. They need to be empowered, influential, diplomatic, dogmatic, determined, and stubborn. That's not an easy role. And they need to, like the product owner, I suppose, be engaged before we start. Before we get down to the point of working in a team to, hey, we're going to build this thing. It's, are we going to build it? Do we need to build it? And there's some important points of view the person in this role needs to bring. I came across the metaphor, the Bridge Not Ferry. Now, I'll often give this talk to people in the business analysis space. I'm sure it's never happened in your organizations, but in some dysfunctional organizations that I have come across, we measure our business analysts by the weight of their documents. There's a few people who actually been measured by the weight of your document, right? And unfortunately, those wonderful documents are most often ignored. But what we do is we put them on a ferry and we send them to the other side of the river. We used to throw them over a wall, but now the wall's, it's too close. It's like going across the water over there. Well, maybe we need to think about ourselves in this value management point of view. as the bridge, bringing people together easily, enabling the continuous flow of traffic as opposed to, oh, wait until I'm ready. Your turn's not here yet. The keeper of responsible decisions. And this means you've got to see the present, the big picture, and the small picture view. Think critically. Ask tough questions. The most important question is, why the heck are we doing this? Who's it for? Where's the value? Why do they care? And by the way, if we're wrong, stop now. Again, in the types of organizations that I spend most of my time in, we find stopping a project is almost impossible. It's been funded. There was a 2-year planning activity that said, yes, we can get it through the financial gateways. $5 million has been allocated because somebody said how much it's going to cost. Oh, $2.5 million, but we'll be late. $5 million, please. Somebody else took that $5 million, put it into a spreadsheet, multiplied it by 3.5 and said, okay, yeah, it's worth doing, without actually evaluating true business benefit. Hey, we've got a formula. And then it's a steamroller coming down the road towards you. Well, actually being able to stop bad work is one of the hardest things about value management. Ideally, we want to stop it really early, and that's where the Agile processes help us. This concepts behind iterative incremental development, the double loop feedback loops that Pat was talking about, the constant inspect and adapt should give us that ability. But it was funny when I said it was hard to stop projects, how many people giggled self-consciously. Because the reality is, it's actually still, despite all of these good practices that we know about, and that, you know, it's embarrassing for us as an industry. We know these things. I hope that there's pretty much nothing here that is new to you. But maybe it's time we started rubbing people's noses in. Strategic alignment, care about what the organization's strategy and goal is. And it really matters. Why are we in business? A lot of work has been done on high-performing teams. A particularly useful study was one that I found by a couple of guys called McKinnock and Ireland. And they talk about what was needed to take high performance and really deliver organizational value. And the most important characteristic that they found was what they called bounded realism. High-performing teams can emerge in almost any situation. We often find them emerging really well in high-pressure environments. The problem is, we don't direct these high-performing teams. So again, we get that really efficiently solving the wrong problem. Somebody needs to put those boundaries in place, to point this group of people, this team, in the right direction. And that's about aligning. It's about knowing what the planned value is. And whether that's using value points, Philips utils, t-shirt sizes for project portfolio work, I don't care. But express that value clearly, explicitly. Define the borders. Inside those borders, trust people. Again, I come back to the manifesto. The best requirements designs emerge from self-organizing teams. Inside those boundaries, trust your team. But know what the constraints are. I love the work that Jim Highsmith has done in the Agile triangle, and the fact that one corner of that is the constraints. Those constraints are important, but they're part of delivery of value. And they give us, again, those boundaries. Also, understanding risk. Risk matters right down at the project team, at a single initiative. And everyone on the team needs to have clarity of what are the risk factors in this project. And guess what? It's never about IT. We do not build software projects for the joy of writing code. If that is your goal, please go and work on an open source project on your own time. If you work for an organization that's paying you money to build software, they're doing it for one of these three reasons. Increase revenue, reduce costs, or improve service, and the only reason we improve service is to do one of those two things. And if you can't equate the work that you're doing to doing one of those three things for your organization, then you are solving the wrong problem. Please stop now. Because you're wasting money. You better find out, why are we doing this? So that's my foundation. That's my hypothesis. Does it make sense? With me here so far? Well, let's get a little bit more into it. Yeah, we were talking at the table at the front here a bit earlier on. You're quiet here. Is it Vancouver?
Yes.
Tools. Who recognizes this thing? How many of you are in any sort of a position where you are defining needs, requirements, goals for a project? You're allowed to put your hands up. There's a few. And you don't know what this thing is.
We can't see it.
Yeah, you can't, I don't care if you can't read the text. If you know the model, you've seen it before. It's Zachman's framework. Now, whether you use Zachman or any of the other enterprise frameworks, you better know what your organization is about. And if your role is to define needs, and you can't equate those needs to your organization's goals, objectives, structures, and all right, in Zachman's framework in particular, up in the top right-hand corner is a really important question. For the organization as a whole, why do we do this? Why do we exist? And each one of those cells, and yeah, I'm not going to apologize because it's a little bit fuzzy. Quite honestly, it doesn't matter that you can't read the detail, but you need to find a tool like this that gives you an alignment of where does this piece of work that we are doing fit in our organization. It's knowing the information, the function, the network, the people, the time, the motivation of the structure of our organization, and then relating any of the initiatives that you're working on to it. I've found Zachman's framework to be a really useful tool for doing that. There are lots of others. I will confess I don't find the TOGAF model particularly useful at the organization level. But knowing the what, the why, the who, the where, the when of your business as a whole, and then the group, the division, the department, the area, right down to the initiative you're working on. This one, again, you can't read the details quite deliberately, but you can go and find it. What can you express about your organization on a single A4 sheet? Or actually A3 sheet, the business model canvas. As the Agile Alliance board, we did this over the weekend, not using this, but we distilled down what we do to one sentence. We deliver value by bringing people together across the global software development community to advance agility. Thank you. And we distilled that down to one sentence. And we can now use that to assess any initiative that this organization is going to spend its time and money on. Is it advancing agility? Is it delivering value to our constituents, to our community? How many of you know your organization's mission statement? Now, is this everyone being polite and not putting their hands up, or is it, I genuinely do not know? And yet, that's the reason you exist as an organization. Again, I say, any piece of work you're doing that doesn't trace back to that, why are you doing it? And just being able to look at the value proposition that we present, or who are our customers? Who are the other stakeholders? Where's our revenue stream? What's the makeup of our business? Then, this tool comes from Ken McDonald, Pollyanna Pixton, and a couple of others. It's the purpose alignment model. For any piece of work, we need to understand how well should we do this? Where should we be truly focusing our efforts? And the two factors here, of course, they're consultants, so they've got to have a four-square grid, right? But the two dimensions, market differentiation, mission criticality. If something is in the bottom, it doesn't distinguish us from any other organization in our industry, and it's not going to, if it doesn't get delivered perfectly every time, we're not going to care a lot. Rebecca's sandwich ordering. Don't spend a lot of effort building the best example of that product. If, for many organizations, accounting falls into this quadrant. You've got to do it to the same standard as everyone else. There are some rules, there are some minimum things, generally accepted accounting principles, that you must comply with. Because if you don't, the tax office and lawyers and things get really unhappy. But beyond that, do it the same way as everyone else. Don't spend $2 million, as I have seen in a couple of organizations. Australian dollars. I think they're even bigger than yours at the moment. Don't spend $2 million customizing an ERP system because the finance department want to work in a slightly different way. Because guess what? The finance department in a mining organization are not actually mission critical. We need to do them well, but not to their specific needs. Now this can get really uncomfortable for the stakeholders whose business area is in that maintenance area. What do you mean you're not going to tailor the package to my exact needs? But if we can look at it in terms of these sort of models, it helps us focus where we're going to spend it. Because this is where you really want to do exceptionally well. And we're going to have to make constant trade-offs as an organization. You never have enough money to do everything that you want to. I don't know, does anyone work in an organization where they've got this unlimited flow of cash? No. So there's always this trade-off thing. Well, tools like this one help us make those trade-offs. And without these tools, what we, again, do is really efficiently solve the wrong problem. We spend lots and lots of money tailoring the financial system to the way the current crop of finance staff want to work. And in 3 months' time, when they've changed, they want to do it all over again. But what about the bit of our business that truly is what makes us unique? And maybe that's the customer-facing stuff. Maybe that's the production process. Whatever it is, find that unique value. And in that space, invest in doing it better than anyone else does. And again, I say, make sure that you're spending the organization's money in the right place. Another tool that can be useful is to do a bit of a heat map. So now we're getting a bit closer to an initiative. This is a capability analysis heat map that just looks, ignore the labels inside there, but think of the areas of your organization or the pieces within a department, and you want to map them in terms of how important they are to us, and how well are we doing that. So if you've got a very high important piece, and we're doing it badly, we have a high performance gap, well, where do I want to spend the organization's money? Solving that problem. If I've got a low risk piece, a low value piece, even if we're doing it just okay, don't bother spending money on that. So now we're taking the tools like the alignment model, we're going a bit closer, and we're actually using this to look at the areas, it might be a department, within a department it might be the capabilities that we have within that business to do work. And then use that to again help choose which pieces of work to work on, which initiatives should be funded, and which ones can be shelved. Because your portfolio is a prioritized backlog. Now in the Agile world, we know prioritized backlogs, yes? It's where we live with. Well, at the organization level, you have a portfolio that is a prioritized backlog. Please work on the most important piece next. And guess what? It can change, and that's also okay. Because if we haven't invested a huge amount in the 3-year plan, well, just pick the next one off the backlog when you have done enough. Getting a bit closer still. Now we're getting into this initiative. Yes, it looks like we have a capability gap here. We want to do something about this. Now we want to spend some time examining what aspects of this process should we fix. And a value stream map is a useful tool for that. How many of you have used process models or value stream maps? So there's a few hands not many. A value stream map, do it in a very lightweight way. Typically we do this in a workshop. It takes a couple of hours with a group of stakeholders to figure out what the flow of work and then the value is. And again, it's to help us identify which chunks of work do we want to do. So here is that one, made a whole lot prettier so you can read it. So this is a process from a real organization who will remain nameless of what it took to set up an account. What were the fundamental steps? So requesting an account took about half an hour on a phone. That then got submitted, it was processed for an initial approval. Took 12 hours to go from there to there. It then waited in a queue for somebody to approve it. Once they'd approved it, it had to go, if necessary, it would go for a second level, and that typically took 48 hours. Then we'd enter the new account into the system. That took about 2 hours, so quite a lot of work filling in these 9 forms. We notified them and we told the customer. So from the customer's perspective, it took 180 hours on average to establish somebody as a new customer. The real situation. The IT person had identified that there is something wrong with entering stuff in the new system. There's 9 forms that have to be filled in, and it takes on average 2 hours to do that. I agree that is not good. They could have they wanted to take that 2 hours and cut it down to 15 minutes. Great! Except from the customer perspective, I've gone from 180 hours to 178 3/4. But we could, and the budget was just under $1 million to do that. We moved 2 desks and cut that time from 24 hours to half an hour, and that time from 24 hours to half an hour. There was not much we could do about this time. The cost to move those 2 desks was $75 because we needed to change some cables. We cut 47 hours out of the process. What was the return on investment versus the just over $1 million to cut that down to half an hour? And that's what I mean, folks, when I say we really efficiently solved the wrong problem. Because we are technologists, we look at the technology and say we can do this. We have to step back and say, what is it that's actually wrong? What's actually broken? Eventually we did fix that. But it was about 2 years later when we moved most of the other delays away. And in the meantime, we had cut 48 hours from that 180, which is a pretty significant improvement from that person's perspective, who, by the way, is the one who's actually paying money for this process. So that's where a simple tool like a value stream map. It's a simple tool, it's not a simple process to build. Your Agile process, and every organization has an Agile process, whether it's branded as such or not, if you're using Agile. If you're doing Scrum, I personally have a problem with Scrum because we talk about build a prioritized backlog in iteration 0. There is absolutely no guidance on what a prioritized backlog is and how we do it and who should be involved and any of those things. So we have a software education, we teach our customers a process that has these short phases at the beginning. And the first one is the one I want to talk about a bit here now. This is what we call the concept phase, borrowed very heavily from, again, Jim Highsmith's work. The envision phase, right at the beginning of the project, figure out what are we trying to do here. And some of these tools help us to do that. Real world example, I was working with a banking organization. We were doing a heart surgery project, replacing all of the teller systems for a small bank, and it's a small bank in New Zealand. Even a big bank is in New Zealand, a small bank here, but it was a small bank by New Zealand standards. But I was engaged they wanted to go agile. Isn't that a great motivation? Let's go agile. Fortunately, we actually got down to it. They had some specific business goals they wanted to achieve. But I was engaged to work with this bank, and we did some training, and then we said, okay, we've got a real world project. This is actually why, because we want to build product quicker and deliver value to our customers sooner. Scary thoughts. And we started with the concept phase in one day. This was completely replaced all of our teller systems. We had a workshop. We had about a dozen people in the room. We had the chief operating officer of the bank. This person was the project sponsor. They were the one who had the budget and for whose area of the business this was all going to happen. We had 3 tellers from different branches of the bank, and they were going to remain on the project as our subject matter experts, our SMEs. We had a back office teller from head office. We had an international teller. In fact, we had the international teller. It's a small bank. We had a branch manager, and we had an operations manager from head office. We had 4 business analysts, and in that organization the business analysts also do the testing, so they were wearing 2 hats. We had the 4 developers who were going to write the code. We had the project manager, we had the architect, and then I was there, and my role was to facilitate the day. We did this concept phase in one day. We started by getting the sponsor, the chief operating officer, to stand up and present his vision for what the new organization is going to look like and why are we doing this. And then we tackled metrics, and we challenged, and we questioned. It was important that it was safe to question everything. There were no sacred cows. Any question could be asked. By the end of the day, we had true clarity within the people in that room as to why this project matters to the organization. We also had enough information that we could do very, very broad cost estimations, and we had a clearly defined set of outcomes in terms of values. And we had built these types of things. We had a vision box. We'd drawn the picture of this project as if it was a box of cereal. We had a matrix that had numbers in there for goals and objectives around increased revenue, reduced cost, improved service. I'm not allowed to show you the numbers, but we had defined the measurable outcomes of that project. And we had this elevator statement, the 1 or 2 sentences that we could explain what this project was about. And this had been built by the people who were in the room. And these were the people who were going to do the work. We got to the point also where we could do a cost estimate. And it was a huge banded estimate. It was, in fact, the bands were, we knew it would not cost less than $5 million. And we didn't think it was going to cost more than $8 million. We were confident in those boundaries. Within those boundaries, we had no idea where the figure was actually eventually going to fall. Now, your finance department might want an estimate with a banded variance of plus or minus 5%. It's a joke. It doesn't actually happen. And please don't confuse estimates with quotes either. But with the same level of precision, we had the benefit estimates, so that we could say, is it worth it? But when we did eventually come up with this $5 to $8 million number, which was towards the end of the day, the project sponsor was, oh shucks, we're in trouble. At the board level, we have allocated money for this project. You know how boards allocate money? I think it's worth $2.5 million, okay? And that's what they'd estimated, $2.5 million. Now, at this point, we had some choices. We could have said, okay, what do we need to do to the scope to fit within the $2.5 million? Problem is, this is heart surgery. We couldn't turn around to the operating department of the bank and say, oh, by the way, next month or next year when we bring in this new system, we're no longer going to let you do international transactions, okay? Scope was pretty fixed. We had to deliver all of the transactions, all of the capabilities. We knew we couldn't deliver it all for $2.5 million. Quality was not flexible because this was customer facing and we defined these goals are there. If we hadn't been able to increase the budget, the best thing to do at that point was shoot the project. We could have cancelled that project at that point, and all we had spent was 1 day with 12 people in the room. Overnight, the project sponsor actually went and spoke to key board members and to chief executive and various others, very, very senior project sponsor, which did help. And he came back to us the next day and said, okay, we can continue. That changed the budget from $2.5 million to $7 million plus or minus 20%. But if they'd said, no, we can't afford it, well, that's not a problem either. We could have canned that project, stopped work at that point, and that would have been the right thing to do. Because in that particular case, scope was absolutely fixed. So doing this boundary work, identifying these high-level goals, objectives, doesn't need to take a lot of time. If you've got the right toolkit and you've got the right people in the room, that really makes a big difference. If this has got to be done through email wars, don't do it. Don't even start. Just bring people together and have a conversation. Another tool that I love, how many of you use sliders on your projects? It's the fancy Agile tool for replacing the iron triangle, the slider. This comes from Rob Thompson's book, Radical Project Management. And Thompson's sliders go way beyond the iron triangle, our constraints. And they look at things like, and he says that there are at least these 7 dimensions to any project. having satisfied client groups, meeting the project's objectives and requirements, meet an agreed budget, deliver on time, add value for your organization, meet quality requirements. I love this last one, have a sense of professional satisfaction for the team. In his work, Thompson says there are some important rules about these things. First of all, no two sliders can be set at the same level. This forces us to prioritize. What is important about this project? Only one item can be set fully on. If something is fully on, I will not sacrifice that. Other things we might sacrifice, we might vary. But the single item that is fully on, that is what we're really going to focus on. And the more you have on the right-hand side, the more of your sliders you set up above the 50% mark, the more likely it is that this project will fail catastrophically. Because what you're saying is deliver everything or deliver nothing. Now the first conversation typically with business executives is everything is on. Of course we want everything on. And then we have to get into the reality-based conversation. You know, the one that goes, I know you want everything to be on, but in this organization, when was the last time we had a project that ran perfectly? And I don't know about your organization, but I've never met one that runs perfectly. And this is a tool to help make those good decisions later, not now. And every project will have a different profile. An example of one that I frequently use is a compliance project. In Australia and New Zealand, we've been doing a lot of work in the banking industry and anti-money laundering changes that have come in. So if we look at that one, from a satisfied client group perspective, the bank's customers, this is a pain in the neck because they've got to provide a lot more information. There's nothing we can do about it that's going to make them happy. That's actually quite low down. Meet the project's objectives or requirements. There's a minimum set that the legislation says we have to have. As long as we can show we've met that, we'll go live. There's other stuff that they would like. So that's probably about them. Meet and agreed budget, that's a joke. The penalty for the banking organizations for not delivering this capability is you will lose your banking license. We'll spend whatever we need to. Deliver the product on time. There is a legislative date. If you do not get this in place by that time, you will lose your banking license. Guess what their number one slider is? Time. Add value for the organization. Ha ha. It doesn't. Meet quality requirements. I would propose that a banking organization would go live with a product that does occasionally report incorrectly whether a transaction meets the money laundering threshold or not. As long as they met that. And then have a sense of professional satisfaction for the team. That one tends to be more organization-wide. But if you are consciously putting it down there, please outsource that to some poor sucker in India. We will burn people up and throw them away. I've only once come across an organization whose primary driver is that one. These were maybe the sorts of places that Pat was talking about this morning. Valve, one of those. In this particular organization's case, they have an active focus that the information, the knowledge that is in our people's heads is the single most important asset that this company has, and we don't want to lose them. We will do everything in our power to keep them. They have a staff turnover percentage of 1.5%. And there's a 5-year waiting list for jobs. It's a great place to work. I'm not allowed to tell you about that. But they are based in Australia. We'll forgive them that. I'm a keeper. So, a key thing to understand, and the purpose of this tool, is to provide good decision-making later in the project. So literally, if we know what the profile is, if we know what the goals, what the objectives are for a single project, if we know what the measures are, what the value components are, when the programmer is writing a line of code and they have two choices about how they can implement an algorithm, they can make good decisions based around which one is going to help us achieve these outcomes in this one. That's the purpose of these types of tools. And we need to reassess our project on a regular basis. We also need to consider what aspects of quality matter. We've got meet quality requirements, but what are quality aspects? And there's a common structure for acronym, or common acronym about quality, which is, comes from ISO standard 9126. And I was looking at it one day and discovered or figured out that you could actually rearrange those letters. So how does your project smell? What is the perfume of your project? I've come across a lot that stink. And we do want to make stuff up. Imagination. Innovative ways of solving problems, of delivering value. Doing new things within those clear goals and objectives, within those boundaries. And this quote from Jim Highsmith is one of my favorite. The number one challenge of Agile project management is creating a culture of innovation. Everything else pales in comparison. Agile projects often attempt to implement the new, the untried, the nearly impossible. This is not the domain in which controlling tasks to achieve a fixed plan will succeed. This is the problem domain that demands the innovative exploration of possibilities. That's where we should be working. Innovative exploration possibilities. And I'm just going to reiterate. Burnout charts don't show value. Use some sort of value metric. And Rebecca's session this morning talking about technical debt, it's wonderful that we've all added to each other. I want to credit Philippe from some of the time that he spent down there with us in New Zealand. He gave us this view of looking at the backlog in terms of the color of your stories and bringing into it architectural features, understanding visible defects, and yeah, is there technical debt there? And I would encourage you to have a look at Philippe's work in that. He can do a much better presentation on that than I can. So, business value manager knows the domain, knows the goals, and conveys those goals clearly, understands strategy, understands where value comes from in our business, can see both the big and the small view, and it's about actively contributing and delivering success in terms of our organization's success measures. And the goal should never be go agile. But I will say, agile helps. In my experience, it gives us a set of tools to do the right work quicker and not do the wrong work, as long as we focus on value. So that's me. Thank you, folks.